The world of politics does not look much better. In virtually every modern, democratic, egalitarian country, from every corner of the globe, we are lucky if we see women enter politics at a rate much higher than 30%. Even the Scandinavian countries, which are so backbreakingly gynocentric, their cities literally ground to a halt last winter due to an ill-fated feminist snowploughing program, their national governments are still only topping out at around 40% female. Whilst these raw political numbers are interesting in their own right, things become even more interesting when we start looking at the ways in which these female politicians actually govern. We often hear the patronising claim that if women ran the world, there'd be no more war. Okay, well, why don't you go and tell that to Margaret Thatcher, who charged headfirst into the Falklands? And I know, it was a British colony, Argentina drew first blood. The point is that Lady Prime Minister didn't exactly sit around waiting to come up with a more peaceable solution. In fact, in complete opposition to the mainstream conventional wisdom that men are warmongers whilst women are peacemakers, this study published by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that European queens over the centuries had been 27% more likely to wage war than their male counterparts. Quote, "A large scholarship claims that states led by women are less conflictual than states led by men. We surmount this challenge by exploiting features of hereditary succession in European polities over the 15th to 20th centuries. We found that queenly reigns participated in more interstate conflicts without experiencing more internal conflicts. Moreover, the tendency of queens to participate as conflict aggressors varied based on marital status. These results are consistent with an account in which queens relied on their spouse to manage state affairs, enabling them to pursue more aggressive war policies. We found that polities ruled by queens were 27% more likely to participate in interstate conflicts compared to polities ruled by kings." End quote. Despite the prevailing pro-female myth, women being in charge does not lead to peace. To the contrary, our biased assumptions that women are naturally peaceful caregivers seems to be clouding our ability to objectively assess these females and their propensity as leaders towards interstate conflict. Ultimately, we are letting our gynocentric reproductive biases overshadow some rather glaring red flags when it comes to the political leadership of women. I can't think of a better example of this than Indira Gandhi, the woman who suspended the largest democracy in the world and ruled over India for 2 years by decree. The emergency, as it was quaintly referred to, apparently involved imprisoning her political opponents, censoring the press, and a mass program of forced sterilisation perpetrated against her own people. The violent conflict she initiated, which divided Pakistan, still has international ramifications to this day. I mean, this lady was such a vile, nasty, evil, despotic piece of shit, she ended up being assassinated by her own bodyguards. But wouldn't you believe it, the good old BBC thought that her impressive list of human rights violations should earn her the title Greatest Woman of the Past 1,000 Years. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, I don't expect a female Winston Churchill or a female Ben Chifley or a female Teddy Roosevelt because, you know, they just don't exist. But if we are going to nominate a woman of the millennium, is the female equivalent of Hitler really the best that the BBC can come up with? Even Margaret Thatcher, while some conservatives lionise her as the Iron Lady, it doesn't bode well when half of the country celebrates your death by lighting bonfires and singing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. I mean, Churchill by comparison was not a particularly popular Prime Minister outside of the war years, but he was well respected by the British people. If we turn our attention to the more pedestrian female leaders of recent history like Angela Merkel and Teresa May, things don't really get any better. I mean, sure, there are some male leaders who are worse. At least Merkel and May aren't total fucking pussies who break down into tears every 5 minutes like two-time Mangina of the Year recipient Justin Trudeau. But, you know, the best you could really say about them is they're kind of meh. Angela Merkel's unfettered immigration policy has pretty well fucked Germany for years to come, and Teresa May looks like she's going to go down in history as the Prime Minister who failed to follow through on the Brexit referendum. Even our own Julia Gillard basically got into the top spot by stabbing sitting Prime Minister Kevin Rudd in the back. During her tenure, she achieved nothing of note, save for a few public tantrums about supposed misogyny, and then left the office the exact same way she entered it, with a knife stuck in her own back. I think Hillary Clinton's spectacularly awful 2016 presidential campaign is best summed up by the words of Jonathan Pye, who compared her with her megalomaniacal Twitter-obsessed opponent Donald Trump by asking the rather blunt question, how shit do you have to be to lose to that? I think it would be very easy to transition from the topic of failed female politicians to the recent string of failed female CEOs, incompetent women elevated far beyond their abilities through tokenism and nepotism, who systematically drove otherwise successful businesses into the fucking dirt. You know, Marissa Mayer and her complete destruction of Yahoo. Ellen Pao, disapprovingly referred to by her own Reddit user base as Chairman Pao, a corporate position that she somehow wrangled after trying to fuck over her previous employer with a frivolous discrimination suit. Susan Wojcicki? Let's not even open that can of worms. However, whilst the topic of female watershed failures in the history of science, politics and big business is interesting, it does make me wonder, what are the average everyday women doing? How much are they contributing to the society that they benefit from? We are living in a post-industrial world where pure physical strength is no longer a limiting factor to career success. As the unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt keeps telling me, women can do anything now. Well, they can do anything, but they're not, are they? I mean, yeah, it's true. You don't need to be a classic strongman to operate the levers of a bulldozer or use a cordless power drill. But despite this, women as a demographic have not gone into the business of building skyscrapers. Most modern work health and safety standards avoid giving strict numbers these days because everyone is a special and unique snowflake, blah blah blah. But nonetheless, they do often give some rough guidelines. This page on manual handling that I found from the University of Sydney stipulates that anything over 16 kilograms requires mechanical lifting aids or a team of people to safely lift. To put that into perspective, if stay-at-home mummy can muster the strength to lift her 4-year-old child up and put them into a car booster seat, then there is literally nothing that she shouldn't be able to do on a job site if she is correctly following workplace safety legislation. And yet, when I walk past a construction site, virtually every person I see dressed in high-vis and donning a hard hat is male. In fact, if you're to believe this headline from The Guardian, construction workers are 99% male. The Australian government occasionally boasts about the progress we've made towards gender equality, stating that women now make up 15% of the mining industry, with a goal of 25% by 2020. That number sounds like a fairly paltry contribution to begin with, but it gets even worse when we actually find a categorical breakdown of the mining workforce, something which the Queensland government seems to have gone some lengths to hide. We find that the majority of these so-called mining industry women are in middle management positions. The government flaunts them as women in mining, but frankly they may as well be call centre workers in any other industry who just sit at a desk all day in a comfortable, safe, air-conditioned office. When it comes to the actual miners and machinery operators, the actual women in mining, it turns out women only make up between 2.8 and 5.6% of those jobs. In the 1860s, Joseph Basil Ligeti designed and built the London sewage system, effectively ridding the city of both its bad smell and its consistent problem of cholera outbreaks. But according to this Daily Mail article, it was only as recently as 2013 that the UK saw its first 2 females willing to get their hands dirty as sewer workers. Women make up only 6% of train drivers, 6% of bus drivers, and 5.1% of truck drivers. In a 2012 report by the United States Department of Agriculture, we see that whilst women made up 30%, which is less than a third of farmers nationwide, only 14% of farms were being run by a principal female operator. They also make up less than 30% of workers in the manufacturing industry. According to this report by the New South Wales Department of Family and Community Services, quote, fewer than 2% of construction, automotive and electrical tradespeople in Australia today are women. There were just 676 female carpenters, 931 female motor mechanics, 638 female plumbers and 1,432 female electricians nationwide in 2011, within a total technicians and trade workforce of nearly 1.43 million people, just over 14% of the workforce. In the largest single trade occupation in Australia, that of electrician, women were just 1.3% of the total. End quote.